Good morning my friends and happy Thursday. I hope you're all doing well and have been having a lovely week. As usual, we are back in the sewing room and I'm going to do a little bit of sewing today. I am going to make another little mini quilt for my wall. If you've been here for a while, then you know that I like to quite sporadically and just, you know, out of the blue, like to make little mini quilts for my wall. Usually it's testing out a pattern or doing just a little block or something that just sort of tickles my fancy. I'll make it into a mini quilt and stick it up on my wall. So this is what we've got going so far. This is not really a mini quilt, it's about a lap quilt, but that's okay. But this is my mini blocks quilt along that I did, like I think it was like 2019. It was quite a while ago, but I absolutely love it and it just sits there right in place in front of my sewing table. And then here we have the other ones that I've done. I've got the tiny little bee, a spool of thread. This was a block in a box kit thing, and this is what it is. It's by Moda and it was a little matchbox quilt that I got from a wonderful viewer, and so I made it a couple of years ago. I think actually during lockdown I made this, and that's just got some really nice quilty lines on it. And then of course I've done a little embroidery of Mickey and Minnie, really cute. And then this last one I did during Vlogmas last year. This is a foundation paper piece pattern by Quiet Play, and then the fabric I used from the Stitch Saloon. So today we're going to make another one to add to the wall. I don't know where it's going to fit, but we're making it anyway. You know, we'll deal with that when we get there. So today's little pattern, you might actually see a version on the wall here. It's going to be a little house. So the little sample that I have to share, I actually did this over the weekend just to sort of test out the pattern and see, you know, how well it's sort of sewed up. But it's supposed to be a house. It kind of got lost with all of the different prints and things that I chose to use. I think it still looks really pretty, but you kind of lose that real definition of it being a house. So the pattern is a foundation paper piece pattern. I got this pattern from Pinterest. I don't know, it was on a Rogue USB stick that I was looking through the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to make that into a little mini quilt and stick it up on the wall. So I will give you a link to the pattern via Pinterest just so I can sort of reference where I got it from, but I don't know who the pattern is by. I don't know where it's really from. The link sort of just went off to like random websites, so I was like, okay. But it's a relatively simple pattern. It is technically a log cabin type design. So log cabin is where you start in the middle and you sort of just go round and round and round and round to create a log cabin type design. You can do log cabin just with strips of fabric and you just sew them together, or you can do it foundation paper piecing like this one. This particular one, as I mentioned, is a house. You can kind of see it in the design. This is the house here in this sort of dark grey, and you've got the shingles and then the outside sort of areas. So from my little experiment the other day, I've decided to do it just in solid colours. I'm not going to put in any kind of print or anything like that because I think, yeah, it kind of gets really lost in there and I want it to be quite bold and stark. The other reason why I chose to do this pattern is because I have a tub load of just like long strips of fabric, like strippy, scrappy fabrics. I have been saving them over time to possibly do a string quilt. I started doing a string quilt years and years and years ago, but it just kind of got lost in and amongst all the stuff under this table. I actually might be able to show you quickly. Just hang on a second. I have a whole pile of like really old quilt tops that I started right when I first started really quilting, maybe about 20 years, I'm aging myself, 10 years ago, and they've all just been put in a pile underneath my table and I've just, you know, conveniently forgotten about them. But I started this string quilt, oh my gosh, I think it's actually ready to be quilted. It's got a border on it and everything. Is it? It's kind of a string quilt, but it's all just scrappy sort of scraps from my stash. So I've sort of been hoarding away all of my strips of fabric to maybe do another quilt like this, but you know, it's not going to happen for a while. Life gets in the way, other projects come along. You know the story. So that's going to go back down into the dungeons of the sewing table. But yes, I have a huge tub of scraps that are like that, and I just want to start using them, sort of just start kind of getting it not so much overflowing. I'm just trying to get it out for you. Oh, it's such a chaotic start to a vlog. But yes, huge tub of just strippy, scrappy, strippy scraps. So all of these sort of things, just, you know, bits of salvages or ends of fabrics that haven't been cut properly at the shop. Just lots of scraps. So these are the fabrics that I want to start kind of using, shifting, and just so getting a handle on things, you know. So I'm going to be choosing fabrics for my little house out of this box. I have plenty to choose from, and as I mentioned, I want to use just solid fabrics. So let's wrap up the chit chat and delve in, and we'll get started. I think I've made a decision. I think it will look good, and even though I've picked these fabrics out, I don't know why I thought it would. It hasn't made any sort of dent or movement on my scraps tub. I mean, it just looks even more full now, to be honest. So I think these are the colours that I've chosen to do. In my original blog, I do like that I used the purple, so I'm going to do purple and then pink, because I like the pink. I wish I still had some more of this light pink, but that's okay. So I'm going to do purple on this side, pink on this side. So I think that should contrast really quite well. And then the roof, I'm going to make it this really nice, gorgeous dark navy. It is so beautiful. And then along the outside, I'm going to do this sort of greeny, aqua, sort of like sea foamy type colour. I think that should be alright. I think that should really allow this to sort of pop. And then for like these corner bits to sort of frame it, I'm just going to do a grey, I think. I don't know whether to get a darker grey, maybe. I'll see. But I think those colours look quite nice. I like the pastel sort of vibes, and then like the really heavy kind of navy for the pitched roof, because I really want that to sort of stand out. I haven't even started sewing yet, and I'm already covered in like little bits of fabric, but I think I'm ready to go. I'm happy with my fabric choices. Now before I get started, I'm just going to give everything a press, because I can't work with crinkly fabric. I like everything nice and crisp and flat and non-crinkly. So all of the pieces that I think I'm going to use, I'm just gonna give a nice good press so they're easier to work with. Now I definitely won't be using everything here. I've definitely pulled out too much fabric, but that's okay. Better to have too much than enough. Another way that I like to sort of prepare sort of like foundation paper pieced patterns is I will actually draw onto the paper or colour in the paper the sections that are going to be that colour, just so I don't get confused, especially as you get into the rhythm of what foundation paper piecing is. You just sort of like go in like automatic pilot mode, and you just go from one section to another, and you just sort of go round, round, round. But yeah, I'm going to just colour in each section the colour of the fabric that I'm using, so that I can be like, okay, now I'm onto this colour, and then we're onto this colour, and then this colour, then that colour. Then I also like to use my wonderful little gadget here. This is a, oh my gosh, I've forgotten what it's called. Is it a pattern marker? Tracing wheel, that's it. And no surprise, it is by Clover, which is one of my favourite quilting brands or haberdashery brands. So it's a little spiky wheel, and what you do is you just sort of mark the pattern, all of the lines that you're going to be sewing with this. And what it does is just sort of like perforates the paper so that one, you kind of know where to fold over the next sort of section that you're going to be sewing, and two, it helps to rip away the paper easier when you finish the design. So that's a cool little tip for you if you're getting into foundation paper piecing. Wow, that's lots of fun to do. Whee! Anyway, I'm so easily distracted today. But that's another thing that I will be doing to prep my pattern ready to start sewing. So the last little bit of prep that I do before I start is set up my sewing machine. I've just got normal sewing thread in it, but I do change the stitch length. Like usually with foundation paper piecing, it's recommended to put the stitch length to a shorter length because you're going to be ripping away the paper at the end. The smaller the stitch length just sort of, I guess, guarantees you from stitches popping or just the stitch coming undone. So usually on my machine I will have a normal stitch length of about 2.5, but when I'm foundation paper piecing I take it down to about a 2. It just makes it slightly smaller and a little bit stronger as well. And so with that, I think I'm ready to go. I've pressed my fabric, machine is set up, I've prepped the pattern, it's all nice and colourful now, and I don't know whether on the back you can see the little perforated lines, you can't, but yeah, those sort of like little holes that I put in the paper will just make the whole doing the technique just so much easier. Another thing that I need is a small rotary blade to cut away my fabrics and a ruler for cutting down the 1/4 inch seam allowances. If you've never done foundation paper piecing before and would like to know, I do have a tutorial. It is about 1,000 years old, not really, but it's I did it quite a while ago, I think like maybe 5 years ago or so it might be a little bit dated, but the instructions are there. It's exactly the same method that I'm doing here now. I think the only thing that I didn't do in that tutorial is change the stitch length on my machine, but everything else I do exactly the same method. It's really easy, super simple once you get the hang of it. So if you'd like to learn how to do foundation paper piecing or a little bit more curious about it, then I'll put a little link to that tutorial here, and then also I will pop it in the description box as well. So with all of our prep done, let's make this gorgeous little house and see how it works out. Please work, please, please, please work. Only time will tell. Let's do it. We are 6-7 steps in, and this is what it's looking like so far. I am very happy with that contrast. It looks really great. So I'm gonna pop on some music and just continue on with that. One other little gadget that I forgot to mention that I like to use when I'm foundation paper piecing is this little tool, another Clover gadget. This lovely thing here is called a finger presser or a seam presser, and it's basically just a little tool that has like a flat edge here, and you use it just to flatten out the seams. So this is a really great alternative to not using the iron or not having to use the iron if you don't have access or the space to set up an iron and an ironing board. This is a really great little tool just to, yeah, just to flatten down your seams before sort of like doing the final press all the way at the end. So yeah, a really great little gadget. I love this thing. So onward and upward, we will continue on and see how it goes. Our first step is done. The block is finished and I've just trimmed it all up and I'm absolutely covered in threads. But anyway, here it is. Doesn't she look great? I love it. This is exactly what I wanted when I made this one. This is the result that I wanted, like really sort of like big blocks of the pattern kind of standing out, whereas yeah, it really blends in with this one. So happy days. The next step that I need to do is rip all the paper away from the back because we don't need that anymore. Give it a good starch as well with just some spray starch just to make sure everything stays nice and sort of flat and lovely. Oh my gosh, the texture on that is just incredible. I mean, look at that. That is like, as a thing of beauty, my friends. That is a thing of beauty. I love just it all intersects and just, oh, I'm such a nerd for this kind of stuff. What was I saying? We're going to rip the paper away, give it a starch, and then we'll sandwich it with some batting and a backing of some sort. I think, again, I'll raid my another box of scrappy fabric, you know. There's tons. And then we'll quilt it and bind it. And I was thinking for binding, I came across these really cute little scraps of gingham. I think this was left over from when I did scrunchies. I think I made a scrunchie out of this fabric. They are a little bit more narrower in size than what I usually use for binding. I usually do a 2.5 inch strip, and I think these are, yeah, they're just on 2 inches. I do want to use these because the whole purpose of making this is trying to sort of use some of my scraps. So I might make the binding like a narrow 2 inch kind of binding, and I guess then it also doesn't take up too much of the design, but I think that's going to look really cute. Just that little sort of gingham kind of highlight to it, and gingham is very homey, and I thought we'll just sort of add something quite sweet to it. So yay, happy days. Right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to have lunch because it is lunchtime, and we'll keep going with this afternoon. And I also need to put my camera on charge. She hasn't been used all that much, so she's taken a real battering this morning. So pop her on charge and we'll come back a bit later. Okay, my friends, we're a little bit later on in the afternoon. Lunch has been had, camera has been charged, and we're ready for the next bit in our mini quilt making. For the middle of my little mini, I've dug out a piece of really lightweight pellin. This is, like I said, a really lightweight type of batting. It's really used more for like wall hangings and craft things, but on one side it's got like a spotty gluey iron-on sort of side, which I'll iron onto the back of our little mini, and it'll just give it a little bit of stability and yeah, just help it to sit on the wall a little bit nicer. I've also got out a scrappy piece of fabric for my backing. It's this one here. It's a fabric that is not really my aesthetic. Kind of goes with it, but I'm not all that really worried because you're not going to see it because it's going to be on the wall. So the back of this little wall hanging is not a big priority, so I'm happy to use up a fabric that I don't particularly like. That's a really hard word to say. Particularly. There you go. You just got to say it really fast and it sounds okay. So let's prep this little block. We'll take the paper off, starch it. We will sandwich everything together and start quilting. Oh man, I haven't dug out my walking foot and quilted on my machine in a very long time. So that should be fun. Friday. I hope you're all well. Say hello to Charlie as well. Hi, Charlie. Charlie. You okay, puppy? Hello. Hello. What you doing? You okay? He's been chasing birds all afternoon, so he's a happy puppy. I have been spending the day editing the vlog that you're watching. I realized I didn't show you the final results of my gorgeous little house wall hanging. Here she is. I'm actually really quite happy with how she turned out. I just did a really basic like grid quilting pattern. Really easy. It literally took like 5 minutes, not even. And then I just sewed the binding on all by machine, and that's how it's turned out. There's the back with the fabric that I'm just not all that keen on, but we're not going to see it, so it's fine. But yeah, it looks great. I'm really happy with it. So I now need to find somewhere on the wall to put it. I'm thinking I might put it next to the create wall hanging, but I think it might get hidden by the cabinet there. It's a tricky thought. I don't know. I'll figure something out. I'll pop it up somewhere. But yeah, I thought I'd end the vlog by showing you the final result because I forgot to. So thanks very much for joining me today and following along as I make my gorgeous little mini. I hope it's given you some sort of inspiration to maybe make one yourself. I will have the link to the paper pattern that I used in the description box below if you'd like to go and make it. I'll also link below the tutorial that I made a couple of years ago on how to do foundation paper piecing if you're new to the technique. Any of the tools and things that I mentioned during the vlog, it'll also be listed in the description box as well if you're interested. But as always, thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you all again sometime very soon. Bye bye.